Marcus and Claudia for the joint coffee talk today, and we're going to get started with the presentation. Let's talk about data governance, some ideas. So thank you, folks. I'll leave it to you.
Thanks, Carol. Yeah, and Claudia and myself, we talk a little bit about data governance, and we called it some ideas. So just kind of over coffee, a few ideas, suggestions around data governance. So together with Claudia, Mansoor, Kartik, and Priyanka, and Gabriel, we formed a little group, almost like a weekly meeting around data governance, where we talk as part of the ADAPT Research Center on value, risk, data governance. And these are kind of some ideas which forming around there, where we look at different levels, different aspects of data governance. So we wanted to share that, but also discuss that with you. So Claudia and myself put a few slides together on background, but then also the framework, what we use in our little meeting, in our weekly meeting around with ADAPT, the value and risk group in Maynooth University on this. So my name is Marcus Helfert. I'm the director of the Innovation Value Institute, and I'm working on digital transformation and data governance. So data governance is one of the topics which is really at the heart of my research and which I'm really passionate about. For several years, and for about probably 15-20 years, I'm dealing with data management and data topics, and there were so many frameworks. So I started with data quality, then looked into data value, and of course these frameworks, they include a lot. So here I have one prominent framework and a very comprehensive framework on data governance from DAMA, the Data Management Association, which includes architecture, data quality, metadata. So many aspects of data management, and these frameworks are there for many years now. They're very comprehensive, very detailed. They provide a lot of guidance for companies, I think, how to do data management around this. However, I think the world has moved a little bit on, and at the moment, data governance and the data topic took really a momentum again. So it's changing, and somewhere we need to maybe rethink a little bit data management and maybe think about, so why did we even change the topic to data governance? So what's in there? What has changed? And to me, two important things have changed. One is compliance, also user-centric ethics aspect, so much more comprehensive aspects, but also the speed, agility, and the possibilities what we can do with data has changed. And these two things, at least, so on the one side, faster, more requirements, on the other side, more ethical consideration, more compliance, more consent management, for example, on data, requires a big balance between, on the one side, flexibility, but on the other side, also catering the risk and revenue. So we need to find somewhere a balance, a mix between all of this, and probably establishing new practices for data management and data governance, so to really avail of the data value, but on the other side, to reduce risk and increase compliance and ethical consideration. So the world has moved on. It's continuing to moving, and we need to look into this. And that's with Claudia and the team together. We're looking into this. And now I hand over to Claudia for this slide on the factors on decisions.
Okay.
Do you want to go in the room, or we can look together?
Sorry? Somebody said something. Okay. So as Marcus talked about the challenges about regarding data management that organizations are facing nowadays. So our group are working on how to generate data value from data fabric. That is our main goal. So people that doesn't know, like, data fabric is an architecture approach that facilitates data handling. So it allows organizations to access, integrate, analyze data in an easier way. So our objective is to understand how data value is impacted by that. So our solution is to associate concepts like data provenance, data lifecycle, consent management, and data value, but also to ensure ethics and trust. So we have several challenges. For example, data value formation in silos. We have data located in different places. So these are silos, so you cannot generate data together, so they're in different places. So, and also how concepts like data lifecycle, data provenance, and concept management affect each other. Because when you're using data, when you need to generate value from that, you also need to think about the quality of data, the security of data. So you need to think about all of these concepts together to generate value and reliable information and knowledge to be used by organizations. So, Marcus.
Yeah, thanks, Claudia. So we're trying to apply an approach where we can model, where we can understand, where we can architect these data flows. And by this, we can look at data life cycles, the value component in it, and bringing that all together. So that's kind of our way of looking at it. So this kind of manufacturing perspective of data. So we take data, we transform data, we transfer data, we use data, and we create value. So this process manufacturing view is very fundamental to our view on information systems and, of course, data systems. And that's what I applied then as well in managing complex data systems, where we try to automate certain aspects of data governance to reduce the manual tasks. So Gartner predicts, for example, that data management tasks can be reduced by 45% somewhere in 2022, but I think we are probably still away from that part. But it's there's a huge possibility if we reduce the time-consuming tasks and automate and help with data governance tasks. And that's where we apply in this particular project in one of the aspects, process mining, to understand where data were exchanged between different systems, how they were used. So to basically kind of re-engineering data flows, understanding the complexity of systems, and of course, then we can understand the data usage, and that helps us to model, understand the data system within that. And then, of course, then we can look at where are opportunities to apply, for example, privacy preserving technologies, where are integration technologies, the record mapping technologies, where we can apply this to improve at least the data flow, the data management aspects within this. And so that's a really interesting project using process mining, which is often used for business process mining. So we're using it for data flow mining, understanding the complexity and automation of data systems. So now I hand over to Claudia again.
So this is our framework, and it's still like a work in progress. So using this framework, we want to understand the relationship between the concepts that like data provenance, concept management, and data lifecycle. So we are going to use case scenarios that will be used to demonstrate how value is impacted at the end of data lifecycle. So in this framework, like in the middle, we have the data sources, but to transform data, we need to process data using the data lifecycle. So you have to access data, you have to collect data. It's depends on what kind of data you're going to process. You have different phases and states. So we need to have data lifecycle phases, and we need to have the capabilities. The content management also need to think about quality, security, and data provenance. These are going to create a data value, because in the end, to create value, you need to think about data collection, the information creation, and then we are going to have value by the end of the process. So that's, we want to have all of these capabilities, all the concepts together, and to see how their relationship, how they can impact, because during the data lifecycle phases, in different phases, we need to look at the consent management, especially with GDPR. The end users, they can withdraw the consent. So, and also we need to, in other cases, in other phases, we need to look at data provenance. So we are putting all of this together and check phase by phase how the concepts are related to each other and how they can generate value. because when they generate value is different, because we have different stakeholders. We have private organizations, public organizations, and end users. Like in the case of smart cities, we have citizens. It's like a different type of value that we have. We have social, political value. So we are looking at this, and at the moment we are using a healthcare system as a use case scenario. How can you use data from patients that you have to anonymize, but also to create value? You need to exchange data between organizations to create, let's say, vaccines and other things related to health. So we are going to use few use case scenarios to validate our framework and to see exactly what is the relationship of this concept and how this in the end is going to affect data value.
Thanks, Claudia. So basically, as Claudia just said, we're trying to use that framework, that high-level framework with the different aspects of explaining, providing kind of challenges on data governance with different contexts. I know you're working on that, the healthcare one, and some in smart cities on examples, scenarios where we can look at, so what are these, the manufacturing part of the life cycle phases apply, how the integration of the different data sources work and how that actually puts together, and then basically how creation on data value, how that happens in different decision-making scenarios. So where is the value? Can we quantify or even estimate something on data value? So what are the parameters on it? And one interesting angle that was labeled here as capabilities came out. So there are certain aspects, certain quality criteria which makes good data governance, and that's kind of somewhere security, privacy, consent, but also I think data provenance, transparency. So, and it's probably a longer list than the 4 aspects what we have there, but these are kind of criteria where we can look at quality parameters, how we can differentiate, say, a good data governance mechanism system to a less mature one. So where we can look at the difference. So what is actually good look like, and how do we categorize, so on different levels, data governance mechanisms, data governance systems. And that's where we would like to get with this work somewhere to something like maybe a maturity model or levels. So to understand what is actually good data governance, how does a good data governance mechanism, and I specifically use mechanism, it's probably not a system in the technical sense, it's loads of different aspects, it's workflow, policies, protocols, but also software systems. So how does something like this look like, where we actually can look at organizations and say, like, here, these are aspects what you can improve, these are capabilities what you can improve maybe the data governance strategy, strategic aspects, the compliance aspects, or culture is also an important one. So to maximize on the end the value contribution of that data system, data ecosystem. So that's where we would like to go to, kind of a measurement maturity model, understanding how good data governance looks like, and maybe even providing some best practices, some guidelines. And I think finally what I want to mention is, of course, this group and this particular framework is part of the core group in ADAPT around that data governance at Maynooth University, but of course links also well to the Empower Data Governance program, co-funded from SFI together with the 4 centers, ADAPT, LIRO, Insight, and Future Neuro. And hopefully we can contribute with this work also to the overall work in Empower as well in the data governance program. So I think data governance is such a big topic. There's so many different angles on it, and what we're trying to do is a little bit for ourselves, organizing it, making that framework, understanding the relationships between these different components, and that's where we are at the moment. We know it's still a lot of work to do, but it helps us in the weekly meetings basically also to bring the various aspects together to discuss it. Probably Claudia, you would agree that framework helps us really to bring the various things together.
Yes, at the moment the framework the one that you saw, it is very high level, just to give an idea, because our goal is to, when we are going to apply the use case scenarios, we are going to provide different views and more details about what capabilities to look at, what you need to consider. So this is only to provide a general view, just to have idea, because we are going to have different views, more details to explain and show the relationships, how they impact to each other.
So yeah, now we open it up for suggestions, particular suggestions, comments on it. Of course, if you have questions as well. So Claudia is very happy to answer all the questions. I take all the comments on board.
That's not fair.
But it's also like, it's as the coffee talks are more like a discussion. So we thought we bring a few ideas to the table, to the conversation, and it's really open for suggestions, comments. So it's not the solution, it's more like really input for discussion.
Just a quick question there. So as you say, the capabilities, it is just a high level at the moment. I understand that it'll be developed further, but for the ones that you have there, like that you have listed out, which would you see as the kind of most mature at the moment, that it's the most kind of work done in? Like, is data provenance still kind of, I can imagine the need for data provenance and a kind of growing need for it, even as you mentioned, manufacturing markets and areas and things like that. Which of those areas do you consider that is kind of the most mature at the moment in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, I have an opinion on it, but maybe Claudia, if you want to have first, you go on this question.
Maybe, well, I think we have a lot going on in quality and security. Because consent, I think, is still not very mature. I think so, but I'm not, I'm not my area. So, but I think quality and security, we have a lot, but of course, things are changing very fast. So we always need to keep up. So I don't know about your opinion, Marcus.
Yeah, so I would say, like, on a technical level, in all 4 categories, we are much better already on metadata management and bringing that all together. But on a managerial and bringing that into the work processes, protocols, culture, I think there's still a lot to do in all of the 4 levels for capability areas. So this is kind of probably also where we see a difference in maturity levels. So that technical solutions, and like this morning I had a conversation about smart cities, and it was about kind of technical data management solutions. So, but I think there's more to it. It's basically also actually incorporating that into the culture, into understanding, into the social kind of the people aspects within that. So I think that's where I would differentiate that. But I would also say, like, quality, data quality, we did a lot of work over the years. Security is ongoing, but it's the same thing there. Like, basically, I think in security, cybersecurity, we have technical solutions, but it's a lot about the managerial aspects, how to do this, how to bring it all together into work practices.
Yeah, and I think that's, I suppose, yeah, there's a certain amount of, or a lot of research done in different areas, but as you say, the application of that then in real world settings, I suppose that, yeah, some work to do on that. But thanks, Claudia and Marcus, that was really interesting.
I actually have a question. And thanks, Marcus and Claudia, for the presentation. I have a question related to this framework that we could see over here. And just I was wondering that because we have 2 data value, one on top and one on the right side of this box for repository, I was wondering that how you could justify why we have those things, those 2 boxes, what they are showing, both of them, and what's the difference actually?
Well, that's a good question. I think I only had to add, because when you are like, because you have the data sources and you use the capabilities and you're always generating value, because depend how exactly you want to use data, you're always generating value. But also for the stakeholders, you're also generating value. I think that's why we have, because I did the framework, but you know, the group, we are always like changing, improving the framework. We're still, as I said, it's still work in progress. So we want to say that during the process, you create value, you have the value, but in the end, you also can have other value. You can have more value for different stakeholders, because as I said, we have different stakeholders. So for one stakeholder, that data, that information has no value, but for other stakeholder, it has value. And also they say that value decrease along the time, but this depends on which organization you're considering. So that's like to get all the value that we want to talk about it, that it's being generated.
And the reason for the question, it was that actually for the IT services, for example, we are going to say in terms of benefit realization, we are going to say that these IT services by themselves, they are not bringing any value, and a data source is not going to create any value by itself. There should be, for example, in the form of type of services to the users, to the stakeholders, and that's the thing. And actually maybe the stakeholders, this is the both side arrows, it shows that exchange of information and the architecture, it needs type of, for example, APIs, maybe some type of infrastructure to enable this exchange of data between the stakeholders and so on. Therefore, this should be clear that why we do put these two boxes around. Thanks, that's from my side.
Yeah, no, we thanks for the observation. We are still working on it because we had a different framework, but we realized that it was like too much information. We just want to provide something that's clear, that everybody can understand. And when we use with the use case, we are going to provide different views and to provide more details, because the one that we had before it was not possible actually it was too much in one model. So we are trying to improve it. But thank you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. Yeah, very interesting framework. And actually, it's kind of continuation of what Zara was asking, and about the stakeholders and the interaction, because of course you have the providers of the data, you have the data sources, you have the kind of the stakeholders that exchange data, and you have the users of the data. So I understand that this would make the framework more complex, complicated. But somehow those interactions, if you can capture, because also it's important how really you provide the data, what is the interface, and what is the best way, because also as a kind of a direct impact on the data provenance, on the content management, and security, privacy. So how you provide the data, how you use the data, who are the users, and I work on patient empower. So if, for example, you were making the example of the healthcare, health with data. Also, if there are medical professionals or institutions or agencies, if these are the users or patients, maybe the interface that you have to create with these different kind of stakeholders, users, would be different. So did you think about that? Are you capturing, and maybe without making it much more complex, but somehow showing some of the interfaces with the stakeholders and providers, again, the users of the data, would give maybe more clarity on these interaction aspects with the user.
Yeah, we are thinking about that. Yeah, but more for the use case scenario, because we have a different, we are going to have different interface. So for the use case scenarios, we are going to provide that part that you're talking about, Marco. But for this framework, we had something before, but we just realized it was too complex. We just want to provide a general idea, and when we are providing the use case, we are going to provide different views, more details, and explaining all of those relationships. So only in that case that we are thinking at the moment, because before we realized the framework was not very clear, but if you provide all the information in one view. So we just thought it was better to split and provide different views based on the needs and based on the scenarios.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, Claudia, what you wanted to, like, not you only, like with Mansoor and Priyanka, then what you wanted to do is more like layers than
Yes.
actually an interaction framework. Like we had also, like, they had diagrams on exactly this, Marco, where you had kind of the interaction between users, stakeholders, value creation, all of more like a process-oriented view. And this kind of framework is now far more layered, basically. So that's what they wanted to get to something simpler, basically. So that's kind of the way at the moment, at least.
No, it makes perfect sense, and I think that you're right. Okay, to keep things simple and to give a clear view of the framework without making too many details. I was just wondering, of course, in the use case will be more specific. If the problem is that somehow you could miss a little bit of the interaction with the external world. I mean, with the gathering, collection of data, and the provision of data, something that could maybe a little bit more on that line without making it more complex than the framework.
Yeah, because we had something, we started going in that direction, but then we realized it was too complex, and we could be able, maybe we could miss one layer, one view. So we decided, okay, let's go for the use case, and we'll just use the views and the layers based on that use case. So it will be more difficult to forget one part. So because we are going only to think of those scenarios and those stakeholders. So we'll be able to provide the layers and that we need for that scenario.
Yeah, and I think Carol just brought up the last slide, so probably our time is up already.
Yeah,
so,
we're
but
just
these
at
are
your
kind of
Sorry,
so,
Carol.
Exactly.
No, that's fine. Thanks
So-
so much, Marcus and Claudia. That was really interesting. And thanks everyone for joining and for your questions. So we have just reached 2 o'clock, so we have to leave it there. But please do join us next week, where we continue with another coffee talk from Professor Piero Formica on sciencepreneurship, which is science, entrepreneurship and sustainable economic growth. So we look forward to Piero's talk next week. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next week.